Good evening and welcome to the August meeting of the Mansfield Shire Council. I'm Mayor James Tehan. Welcome along, and I'd like to welcome my fellow councillors and council officers. I'll now call on each councillor and ask them to confirm verbally that they can see all councillors and hear the proceedings. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Raby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Councillor Sladden.
Good evening. I can see all councillors and council officers and can hear them. Thank you.
And thanks, Councillor Sladden and Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. I'll now ask each councillor to confirm by raising their hand that they could all hear each statement of the councillors. Thanks, councillors. Chair, do we have any apologies for tonight's meeting?
There are no apologies, Mayor.
Thanks, CEO. Mr. CEO, I will now read the statement and call on each councillor to confirm their commitment. As councillors of the Mansfield Shire, we are committed to ensuring our behaviour meets the standards set by the Mansfield Shire Councillor Code of Conduct and Councillor Charter. We will at all times faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in us by the community. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Raby.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Sladden.
Yes, Mayor, I confirm my commitment.
And Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I confirm my commitment.
Thanks, councillors. I'll now call on Councillor Mark Holcomb, Deputy Mayor, to recite Council's acknowledgement of country.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Our meeting is being held on the lands of the Tungarang people, and we wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. We would also like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. I will now call on each councillor in turn and ask them to declare whether they have any conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda items tonight. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda items.
Councillor Raby.
I have no conflict of interest to any agenda items listed tonight.
Councillor Sladden.
I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda items tonight.
Councillor Webb.
I have no conflicts of interest in regards to any agenda items tonight.
Thanks, councillors. Item number 7 is the confirmation of previous minutes. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meeting held on the 19th of July 2022 and 2nd of August 2022 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Can I have a seconder to that motion?
Excuse me, there's a point of order, I believe, here that there was an error in one of the a typographical area in relation to the words station being substituted for services in the services precinct. And I believe we would need to correct that at this point. In the resolution, I'm afraid I thought this was sorted in the previous meeting, station precinct item.
Okay, all right. Well, Councillor Webb, would you like to redo that recommendation in light of that information?
Motion being that the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meeting held on the 19th of July 2022 Be confirmed as an accurate record with the amendments around station precinct being referred to as service precinct.
That service precinct being referred to as station precinct.
Service precinct being referred to as station precinct. And the 2nd of August 2022 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Can I have a second to that motion, please? Councillor Sladden. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item number 8 is representations. Mr. CEO, do we have any representations tonight?
There are none, Mayor. There's 2 later in the meeting in regard to a matter on the agenda.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Item number 10 is the Mayor's report. Can I have a motion in relation to the Mayor's report, please? Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion being that Council received the Mayor's report for the period 11 July 2022 to 3rd of August 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Sladden. A seconder? Councillor Webb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item number 11 is reports from council appointed representatives. The Mansfield Shire CEO Employment Matters Committee has recently met, and the meeting was to announce the new CEO of the Mansfield Shire from September the 5th, 2022, which is Kirsten Alexander, who's with us here tonight, the current Manager of Infrastructure and Planning. Congratulations to Kirsten. I'd also like to thank Sharon Scott, who assisted in the process, assisted the committee. Her advice around the appointment and the process was invaluable. So thank you to her, and also to Davidson's, who were the search agent which the Shire used, and thanks to their organisation, to Seamus and to anyway, her name escapes me. Sorry, one of the other Vanessa. Sorry, yes, that's right. Would any other councillors like to speak in relation to that committee? Councillor Raby or Councillor Holcomb, who are on it. Anything further to add?
I'd just like to briefly say that I thought it was a widely contested field, in terms of there's a lot of applicants early on from a variety of different backgrounds. And I thought the process was really well run, Mr. Mayor, as you said. I think by Sharon Scott and Davidson's, but also yourself. I thought you ran it extremely well. So, I think the result that we got justifies all the work that was put in, and the result was Kirsten Alexander being appointed. So congratulations, Ms. Alexander.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Raby.
Yeah, I mirror that statement too, Mr. Mayor. I know it was a lot of work on your behalf to chair that committee. There is a lot, and I was very appreciative of how you went about it. Very professional, and I'm glad with the result. I think we got a great result for Mansfield, and I'm hoping that we also gave the other councillors the feeling that we'd done a good job on this, so that our recommendation could be put forward to them, and for their support as well. But thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. The Lake Eildon Land and Water Management Plan Implementation Committee, Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mayor. This committee has now disbanded. Goulburn Murray Water have disbanded this committee. They were responsible for organising it. As the chair of that committee, I would like to acknowledge and thank the community members and the department, or the members of various departments and agencies that were a part of that committee. This particular committee has really been superseded by the Lake Eildon Master Plan, and that is ably being led by the Murrindindi Shire Council, but it does have our CEO as a member of that committee. And as I said a couple of meetings ago, that really the work that the Lake Eildon Land and Non-Water Implementation Plan Committee, the work that they did really did result in the Lake Eildon Master Plan. And so I thank them, and I look forward to a successful outcome in seeing that all the recommendations of and initiatives of the Lake Eildon Master Plan being implemented. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sladden. There being no other reports, could I have a recommendation in relation to item 11, please? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council note the verbal reports provided by councillors in relation to their representation on external committees.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Seconder, Councillor Holcomb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item number 12 is public question time. We have no public questions tonight. Item number 13, Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillors, do we have any questions or comments in relation to the Chief Executive Officer's report? No. Can I have a motion in relation to item 13.1, please? Councillor Webb.
Motion being that council receive and note the Chief Executive Officer's report for the period 13th of July 2022 to 5th of August 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. A seconder to the motion. Councillor Rabi. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No comments, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rabi.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No other comments in relation to the motion? All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Must have been a good report. Well done, Bill. Sorry, Mr. CEO. Item 13.2.1 is the Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity Grant application. The responsible officer is Christian Burchard, who is with us, I think, coming to us. Mr. Burchard, are you?
Yes.
Here he is.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Mr. Burchard. How are you? Welcome to the meeting.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's good. That's good. We're on item 13.2.1, the Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity Grant application.
Yep.
Councillors, do we have any questions or queries of Mr. Burchard? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm not too sure if it's a question of to Christian or Ms. Alexander. If we don't get funding for this, what happens?
Yeah. Sorry, Kirsten, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to answer that one. Look, if we're unsuccessful, I guess it would need to be considered as part of a future budget process. I mean, it is a Department of Transport road. It is a black spot. It is a high priority for funding if you look at intersections around the Shire. and we would just have to continue to lobby for funding for this roundabout.
If I can just take a step further, being that there's been a fatality on this, and it is well known as being an extremely dangerous intersection, is the Department of Transport, are they supportive of our application?
Yeah, it's my through you, Mr. Mayor. It is our understanding that they are supportive of, and they encouraged us to make an application to this fund. We did previously submit a black spot application, and the feedback we got from that process was that this was the appropriate fund to submit a grant application to. So we haven't yet had a response in relation to the financial contribution, but yeah, we have written to them in relation to that, and are following that up. But they did encourage us to apply to this fund.
Thanks for saying that. And would I be correct in saying that on this heavy vehicle bypass that is a very important part of our infrastructure plan, that this is the most dangerous point on that road?
Yep, given there has been a fatality here and it's an identified black spot, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Rabi.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is that is there also further? Have you got me? Oh, thank you. My question is there a further opportunity to get funds from the federal government? And I'm assuming this is a state government application that we're talking about at the moment.
It's actually a federal government fund, the Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity Program. But we are looking for a state contribution to assist with that financial co-contribution, given that it is a Department of Transport road.
Yeah, sure. So just to, I'm sorry, I'm a bit silly with these sort of things. So we're applying for the federal grant through the state government or federally?
It's my understanding that the federal government will refer it to the state. Christian may be able to add some information on that one.
As I understand it, it needs a stamp of approval from the state DOT.
Okay.
But it is a federally funded program.
Yeah, and I do believe, you know, from my community consultations on this, it's a sensitive issue, this, given the fatality around this. So thanks very much for your work, Christian, in this. Well done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mayor. This isn't a question, it's more of a statement. Given that the original study for the alternate route, heavy vehicle alternate route, was actually back in 2008, was actually commissioned by what is now Regional Roads Victoria, and they actually designated roundabouts at all of those intersections. I would certainly be, well, not confident, but I would be optimistic that the state, given that they put them in the first place, would come to the party on this. So here's hoping. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sladden. No more questions. Can I have a motion in relation to this item? Councillor Rabi.
I'd like to move the motion, Mr. Mayor. The council endorses the submission of a grant application to the Heavy Vehicle Safety and Productivity Program for construction of a roundabout at the intersection of Dead Horse Lane and Mansfield Whitfield Road. 2, note that a financial contribution has been sought from the state government for a total amount of $372,970 ex GST. And 3, receives a further report once the outcome of point 2 above is known.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. And I have a seconder to the motion, Councillor Sladden. Councillor Raby, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say that that there is concern. We really do need this roundabout, and in remembrance of Kama Bryant, who lost her life tragically on that intersection. A local lady driving slowly. It was just one of those things. It is a dangerous intersection. Mansfield is becoming heavier with our traffic, especially down from the north, along driving to the south down that road. And also, you know, a lot of women are the fathers driving their children to school at 8:45 every morning. It's a very, very busy intersection. I'd like to thank Christian Burchett. I know Christian's last day today with the Shire. He's been an outstanding member, and thanks for all your work you're doing in this, Christian. I'm sure the wider community of Mansfield thank you for this work. It's close to their heart. It ticks every box: sustainability, community engagement, collaboration, financial impact. Let's not forget at all that we tragically lost one of Mansfield's leading citizens at the corner of that road. And I'd like to thank Christian and Ms. Alexander for all the work you're doing there. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Councillor Sladden, as seconder, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only that I look forward to the design work being done on the intersection of Mount Buller Road and Greenvale Lane for a similar intersection correction, and hopefully an application for a combination of both state and federal monies for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sladden. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thanks, Mr. Burchard, for your contribution. Although, no, I won't thank you because I think you're staying with us, aren't you, for another one yet? So I'll move on to item 13.2.2, which is the Footpath and Shared Path Strategy 2022. The responsible officer is the Manager of Operations and Capital Works, Christian Burchard. Councillors, do we have any questions or queries in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Raby?
Yeah, in the report, Mr. Burchett, you say that on the key issues, rather than one prioritised list for the whole Shire, each township has been given its own list of prioritised projects, thereby eliminating the necessity for one township to be prioritised over the other. Could you just talk to me about that and the idea behind that quite visionary statement that you've got in there?
Yeah, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was something we picked up through the community feedback, as well as through a couple of years of council meetings, that it is important to allow the outlying townships as much attention as the Mansfield township, and that was certainly a feedback we got from the community. And we didn't want to have competing priorities where funding may be available for a footpath project, and just because the Mansfield township maybe had some projects that sat higher on the list of priorities, they necessarily received that funding. So It was our thinking that each township should be treated separately and have its own list of priority projects that we can treat individually for that township. Because, and certainly people within that township, to them, those are going to be the priorities. They're not going to list the projects in some other township as a high priority for them. So it made a lot of sense to do it town by town. And that way,
Yeah, thanks for that, Christian. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's visionary, and I thought it was a great statement that gives the community of each township outside of Mansfield ownership of their own town. Thank you for your report.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Any other queries? Councillor Sladden.
Again, not a query, Mr. Mayor, just another statement. I am pleased to see the realisation of this strategy after 6 years. And I would also like to acknowledge the original author who's still with us, Mr. Robert Graves, and the work he did. And as Councillor Raby just highlighted, the fact that this is not a strategy for the Mansfield Township, it is a strategy for the whole Shire. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sladden. If I could also just put a comment in too around this, I'd like to congratulate the people of Jamison who responded with an outstanding community feedback. Obviously, they are treasuring the building of footpath 27, and yeah, well done on that. It was outstanding, the response from there, but also from the rest of the community, and reiterating what Councillor Sladden Raby said about the outlying communities being well included in this study. If there's no more statements or comments, can I have a motion in relation to this item, Councillor Raby?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Council adopts the Footpath and Shared Path Strategy 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. A seconder? Councillor Webb. Councillor Raby, would you like to speak to the motion?
I do. It's close to my heart, this one, Mr. Mayor. I very much believe that having connectivity with any town so that our children can walk to work, ride their bikes, and have interconnectivity for elderly people like myself to be able to walk, and hoping that we'll also see some chairs. So when I walk my 100 metres, I can just sit down and have a little rest. But I'm really looking forward to this because the connectivity also aligns with our climate change plan of getting cars off the road and making our towns and district more livable than they are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Councillor Webb.
Just to mirror many of the comments that my fellow councillors have said, really applaud council officers here for taking the view that as a shire we are made up of several different townships, each of which have their own desires and needs, and to break this up into the separate areas, I think is a really good step forward. While Mansfield Shire has had a huge increase in population, and Mansfield Township has seen a big increase in population, many of these outlying settlements have doubled in their population. So the infrastructure pressure on some of these areas is significantly more than what Mansfield Township is feeling in proportion. So seeing each individual township as its unique and its unique view of requirements is critical, and I applaud the staff for taking that view. I also just want to comment on the amount of feedback we got on this particular strategy, which shows that this really is something close to everybody's heart, more than just Councillor Raby's. So it's great to see the amount of engagement that we received on this. and well done to all the communities who put their views forward. And it shows that we are taking that on board and we want to execute your will. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Councillor Holcomb?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, over and above the comments that have been said, I think there's a few things that really stood out to me in this strategy. One, apart from the work done by Christian and your team and Ms. Alexander, was the feedback was, as a number of said, has been exceptional, but the engagement process, which has really been an important priority for this council, I think really came to the fore in this exercise, how I said, purely on the numbers that have responded. So that's been highly successful. And I think the more projects we get into, the better that we're getting at doing engagement and the better responses we're getting from the community. So to me, that was really encouraging. But from a council point of view and also from a community point of view, I thought it gives very clear, good forward planning guidelines for us in this area for a long period of time. And in particular, it prioritises the projects we need to look at. So that makes it a lot easier for us, and it makes it a lot easier for our ratepayers when they can easily find out where the next footpaths are being done and when. So that to me is a real positive about how it's been approached by Christian, you in particular, and your team. It's been well done, and the whole thing is easily understood, and also, which I also like, it can be updated in the future if something really comes to our attention that needs to be addressed. So it's well done to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. There's no more. I'd like to put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Before we move on, I'd just like to thank you, Christian, for your work here in the Mansfield Shire on behalf of Council over the last 2+ years. And wish you all the very best in your future endeavours, wherever they take you, and hopefully we may see you back here one day. So good luck and thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, moving on to item 13.2.3, which is the on-site wastewater management plan review. We have Senior Coordinator of Community Safety, Mr. Kevin Murphy, coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Kevin, I can hear you, but I can't see you, that's all. So I'm not sure whether you've got your camera. There you are. No, got you now. So welcome along the on-site wastewater management plan review. Councillors, do we have any questions or comments or statements to make? Councillor Sladden.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Murphy, I noticed with the revised action plan that we have retained the original 200 site inspections that was in the old domestic wastewater management plan. Given over the past 6-7 years we haven't been able to achieve that, I would just be interested in your response to the fact that even though Council has allocated some money in the current budget to appoint someone to look at this, is that still achievable, Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Councillor Sladden. For the Mayor, I believe it is. As you indicated, there has been the increased budget allocation, both in regard to personnel to go out and do the inspection and also admin support to enable the follow-up with the landowners following those inspections.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. No further questions, Mr. Mayor.
No further questions. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this item? Councillor Sladden.
Thanks, Mayor. The motion being that Council adopts the updated on-site wastewater management plan 2022. It notes the updated action plan included in part 10 of the plan. Provides a copy of the adopted plan to each of the water authorities and thanks them for their participation in the review process, and notes the further engagement proposed with community and identified stakeholders regarding ongoing responsibilities related to system monitoring and management.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Can I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Webb. Councillor Sladen, do you wish to speak further to the motion?
Briefly, Mayor. Once again, thank you to Mr. Murphy for the work that he's done on this. He's certainly been involved since, as I referred to earlier, the original domestic wastewater management plan. And seriously, this is an extremely important plan to ensure that the Mansfield Shire, being in a water catchment, the whole Shire, is able to further develop and expand. So hopefully next year's budget, Mr. Murphy, we can increase the assistance to get this fully happening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Councillor Webb, a second, you wish to speak to the motion?
Nothing further to add there. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Then I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Thanks, Mr. Murphy, for your attendance.
Thank you.
Item 13.2.4 is the planning scheme amendment C51, Mance Part 2 adoption. The responsible officer is Manager of Planning Environment, Ms. Crane. Welcome, Ms. Crane. Councillors, do we have any queries or questions? Councillor Rabi.
This is a very carefully worded question, Ms. Crane. Generally, as our head of planning, and how do you feel about the outcome from the panel? I'll give you the background of where I'm asking this question from. Given that a significant amount of Mansfield residents within the Shire have very strong views on where we should be heading in the future. How do you feel that we've been treated by the panel?
Sorry, just before you answer that, Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mayor. Councillor Rabi, I understand the intent of the question, but I guess as officers, what we deal is with outcomes rather than how we feel about them. We understand the background to this matter and where it's landed, but I think for Ms. Crane and other officers, it's a matter of working with what we've been dealt with.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll withdraw that question, and I apologise to Ms. Crane for putting her in it. The intent of the question was an honest intent, but I withdraw it. Thank you.
Righto, thanks, Councillor Rabi, and thanks, Mr. CEO. Okay, do we have any questions, more questions relating to C51? If not, I'll ask for a motion in relation to the agenda item. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that's on, rather than read it verbatim, it's on page 28 of the council agenda, as stated there.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. This planning scheme amendment was one of two major pieces of amendment, major pieces of planning amendments that we have put through in the last 18 months, and a lot of work has been done on that by Ms. Crane and her team. And the result, as we all know, was disappointing. And I think it's been disappointing from not just from the council's perspective, but from the community's perspective as well. So it's a matter of how we try and resurrect, or also try and save some of the positives out of this as best as we can. And I think what you've put forward in the work that you've done on this, and had feedback from the community as well, I might add, in this process, is a credit to you. And on that basis, I'm more than happy to move the motion that we go this next stage of presenting this to the Minister.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Ravi, a seconder, who wish to speak to the motion.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I also endorse Councillor Mark Holcomb's comments here. There's a lot of work done. Our community are very keen to have a say in our planning, and I am hoping that the Minister will take note of the people and what we want. We have the vision for our community, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a positive resolution from this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Ravi. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I would just like to acknowledge Ms. Crane and the work that she's done on this. Something that she has picked up, and it has been a challenging time. And yeah, congratulate her on the work. And I believe that the recommendation that's there, or the motion that's there, is a sensible compromise. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sladden. If there's no more comments, no more speakers, I'd like to put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Thanks, Ms. Crane. Item 13.2.5 is the 140 Highton Lane Amendment to Development Plan 001B22. The responsible officer is Management Planning Environment, Melissa Crane. Councillors, do we have any questions? Oh, sorry, hang on, before we go there, we've got two deputations. So I would like to, looks like we've got Miss Fiona King as our first deputation. Is that correct, Moira? She first in? Yep. Okay. Hi, Fiona.
Hi, how are you, everybody?
Yeah, Tian here. Like you to welcome you to the meeting. Thank you for coming in and speaking. So you have 3 minutes to speak, and then councillors will ask you a question after that. So if you can try and hold your phone still and go for it.
Okay, sorry, everybody, I'm new to this. I'll try and be short and sweet. So I've missed everything that you've discussed so far. I assume we're up to discussing Highton Manor Amendment.
That's correct, yeah.
My husband, sorry.
No, sorry, that's correct, yeah. And we haven't discussed the issue. We're just waiting for you to speak first. Yeah.
Sure. So there's obviously a planning amendment in place, and from our reading, it looks like most of the amendments, if not all of them, are probably going to get the okay from you guys. The developer's receiving most, if not all, of what he's asked for, and all we're asking for is that our privacy be considered. We don't really feel that that is too much to ask, but basically we share a large boundary, about 210 metres, with Highton Manor, and we're going to have 6 properties on our fence line. We know that's a reality. The development plan's in place. We've only had the property in our name, I don't know, a year and a half, but it's been in the family for 30 years and passed along to us finally. Our main concerns are the fence. So it is to be on our boundary a farm fence, which currently would suit the purpose. But once there's 6 houses looking straight into our property and our bedroom, it probably won't suit the purpose anymore. We think that there needs to be something better sort on fencing. I understand the current plan approves a farm fence, but the current plan also approves a smaller number of lots. And if that amendment can be made to increase the lots, we're not understanding why an amendment to fencing to consider our privacy can't also be made. Also, the double-storey houses, I can't remember which section of the plan it is. I'm going to say it's yellow, but I might be wrong. There's 12 lots. We were hopeful that there won't be double-storey houses going in there, again, for the purposes of overlooking and things like that. So I just wonder how everyone would feel if they go from this open space to the houses, which, like I say, we know is going to be there. But now these houses are going to be looking straight in on us. And the developer thinks that a farm fence is okay for that, with the addition of chicken wire to contain small animals. We're rural living, so I don't know how the new residents will feel if we have horses that would like to eat their underwear off the clothesline. We just think that something more substantial needs to be in place there. We've invited the council and the developers to come and have a look at the property from our side and just try and work with us, but nobody accepted that invitation or responded to it. So we're just really hopeful that our privacy can be protected.
Thank you very much, Ms. King. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Rabi.
Oh, good day, Fiona King. It's Steve Ravi here. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. How far away is the boundary from your house?
Not that far. I couldn't tell you in meters. I could walk it right now, but you probably wouldn't get the idea. You probably can't tell. Yeah, so I am standing on my veranda right now in front of my bedroom window, and you probably can't see the fence because it is just a farm fence at the moment. But right,
it's behind the shed there, is that it?
Yeah.
There's
So
some
just
power
at the
lines
corner.
there? Yeah.
Pardon?
There's some power lines.
Yes. So that's our other problem there, is that we have been told we should just plant it out, but we're actually limited to what we can plant because we've got the power line reserve as well.
So what are you actually wanting out of this, Fiona? Do you want a tall fence to block you out?
My husband feels, well, we don't want to look into people's backyards, nor do we want people to look into ours. I realise the developers moved the setback of the properties, which is great, but people are still likely to have sheds in their backyard and store junk behind it. And I don't particularly want to look at that, nor do they probably want to look at our junk either. My husband feels that a colour-bond fence is probably the most suitable option, just in terms of maintenance. It's going to be harder wearing. I don't really know personally. But it's more just the privacy. It's a 210 metre stretch. A timber fence is going to warp and look terrible. A farm fence is see-through. The developer has suggested he could plant a hedge on his side, but that also is a large amount of maintenance for us this side of the fence. Plus, how do we know that people won't move in and remove the hedge? And that's our other concern, that we'd like some protection in place, that when we do have 6 houses on our boundary, that they're not all going to come in and build different fences. And then we've got a patchwork quilt of fencing right outside our bedroom window.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Fiona.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Fiona, thanks for your presentation. That was really great. Just a quick question, and you mentioned the developer offered to plant a hedge out there to help screen the property off. Did you meet with the council officers and the developer? I think there was a meeting, is that right?
There was a meeting way back originally. I going to say it was the end of June, maybe July.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Mhm.
Anyway, a number of weeks back. And it wasn't discussed in detail then. We had hoped that we'd get a chance to speak with the developer before tonight. We did leave our phone number, but we haven't heard anything. And in that meeting, he just said that they would come to some kind of solution with the fencing. He's previously talked to us over the fence and said that we need not worry. He'll be taking care of the fencing. It won't look terrible. It will protect our privacy. We just don't feel that we've come to the point yet where it's a suitable option for everyone. Also for the new residents that move in, are they going to be wanting to look at our kids tearing around a paddock on motorbikes? Probably not.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Fiona. That's all I need to know.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Ms. King, councillors?
Ms. King, sorry.
Councillor Holcomb.
Sorry. Ms. King, when you moved there, were you aware that that was a residential development? Or
So
that it's been planned and had been for some years?
Yeah, so because the property's been in our family for 30 years, we knew that it had been rezoned a long time ago. Obviously, you know, we're hopeful that it will take quite some time for it to be developed, but we do know that it has been rezoned to general residential. Whether or not that's the right decision, that's not what's up for argument now, really, is it? We did know, yes, but we also have been told that we'd be able to come to a suitable arrangement with the fence, and we're just not at that point where we feel it's suitable.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks, Ms. King, for your presentation. I think that's all the questions we've got. Thank you for coming along and for taking the time to present to us. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
And next is Nicholas J. from.
Hi there. I'm from KLM Spatial. I'm acting on behalf of the proponent. So I'm actually the proponent's town planning consultant.
Right. Well, welcome along, Nicholas. And we can hear you, but we can't see you.
All good.
There you are now. Okay. Welcome along. So you've got 3 minutes, Nicholas, and at the end of that, there may be some questions from councillors.
Yeah, no problem. So fundamentally, I guess one of the biggest change that we're seeking to propose as part of this amendment is to increase the number of lots to the northern boundary from 6 to 14. There's also an increase of 2 lots to the southern section, to the yellow area. And I guess what I would point out is that the next stage would be to seek planning approval for those lots themselves. So this doesn't permit those sites from actually being developed. So in terms of some context for the site, so the site is zoned, seeks to provide for a diversity of housing choice. So the proposed amendment to the development plan provides that increased housing choice. The alteration also aligns with council's housing and settlement strategy. And more importantly, I guess the amendment also ensures that the manor itself can be rejuvenated and also its long-term viability can be protected. We know that the manor is currently not used and requires significant rejuvenation. So obviously there's a lot of net community benefit as part of this whole package. Importantly, the landowners have actually altered the proposal as best possible to suit objectors' concerns, and have even reintroduced building envelopes and building exclusion areas. These were actually removed from a previous iteration of the development plan many years ago and many iterations ago, and they've actually reintroduced those restrictions to appease and to meet the concerns that have been raised by the residents. So I guess for those reasons, we respectfully request that the council's planning officer's recommendation is upheld and approval is granted. In terms of the fencing, I'm happy to take any questions on that, and I'm happy to work with the neighbour as to what they'd like to see for that interface.
Thanks, Mr. J. We've got a couple of questions. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. J, for that. Just the objectors' comments regarding the fence or the gap in fencing and the type of fencing. Can you just tell us exactly what's going to happen there?
Well, at the moment,
sorry, Mr. J, and how their concerns may be alleviated.
Yeah, so we would be happy to include in the development plan fencing to be negotiated with the adjoining property owner to the south, or words to that effect. Currently, the fencing that has been constructed by development along Highton Manor is actually not in accordance with the development plan. That was discussed a lot in previous meetings with objectors. So again, we're happy to work with the southern landowner and put in place something that is that they would like to see, but also that council would like to see. We note that currently the farm fence probably wouldn't provide for that security, that privacy, and that amenity. So again, we're happy to work with the objector, the southern landowner, to put in place something that does fit that.
And sorry, if I can just take that a step further.
Yep.
How I read, I think how I read what you plan to do is that you've increased the building envelope from 1 metre on the, is that right, on the original development plan?
No, so the current approved development plan doesn't have a building envelope. We have reintroduced that.
Okay.
So technically, right now, anybody could build on those parcels of land effectively anywhere they wanted to, and importantly, at any height that they wanted to. So we have actually tightened up what can be done on the land to the benefit of the adjoining property owners.
And just so I can understand, so that envelope is now gone from out to 4 metres, is that right? From their boundary?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, from what was it before, 1 metre, or was it plus?
I think it was 1 metre, but we're going back, as I said, like many iterations ago.
Yeah, okay. And where does, and from also how I understand, you're building some bush hedge, some hedges as well.
Yeah, so I think
where do they fit? Where do they go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the hedge is actually abuts the back of the lots that face onto Highton Manor. Oh, sorry, to Highton Lane. Apologies. So there's been some conversation about a hedge under the power lines. The hedge in itself is a requirement of the development plan. Again, for the rear within our site, but to the rear of those lots that face Highton Lane. All right. So it doesn't affect the King's property. There's no requirement to plant a hedge along there. Okay. Is that an option? Within our site, we could plant a hedge along that interface if that was what is required. Technically, under the planning scheme, that doesn't provide the privacy that they are potentially looking for. It's not it's not solid. It can be removed. Again, we're happy to work with them. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rabi.
G'day, Mr. J. Can I call you Nicholas? It'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, call me Nick.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Steve Rabi here. This southern boundary of 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 houses on that southern boundary.
Yep.
Are you seeking to increase the number of lots there, or is that the same number of lots?
Correct. It is the same number of lots. So that's not increasing from what currently is approved.
So the they're currently approved.
Development plan.
And as you said, they're allowed to build up to 1 metre within the boundary. But what you're saying, that you will accommodate a fence for their amenity and privacy, and even discuss putting in a hedge.
Yep. We're happy to work with the neighbour.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much. But just wanted to make sure I got it right. That was all. Thanks, Nick.
No worries.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for your presentation, Nick. That was great. A couple of questions for you. You've been really forthcoming about working with the neighbour during this, which is excellent. That's what we like to see. How did it sort of get to the point where it's come to council without something like this being sorted out? It feels very last minute for such a long tooth thing. There seems to be an objection which has been quite prominent. So sort of all very last minute going, yeah, we'll work with a neighbour. So why wasn't this sort of sorted out properly before coming to council?
In terms of the fencing issue?
Yeah.
Or to be honest, I wasn't aware that what was being sought was a colour-bond fence. So maybe that's my mistake. But again, we're happy to work with that neighbour. And it's not just lip service. I'm happy to have something included in the development plan to, not to be too vague, but again, so that we can come to an agreement as to what actually fencing needs to be along there. My understanding is that the fencing that is constructed to the existing dwellings, again, that face onto Highton Lane, are not in accordance with the development plan, are all very different. Given that we are one developer, one owner, we're obviously happy to see something that's uniform across there. And so, again, we think that'll be a better outcome.
Okay. And those, I wasn't able to quite understand the lots that are on the southern boundary. Is the envelope for a double-storey buildings? Is that right?
So there is only, so right now, so as I said, sorry, the any future development is subject to a planning application. Right now, there's no restrictions on what can be developed on those lots. We would be seeking to construct 2 double-storey dwellings, but none of them would be along that interface or that boundary.
Okay, so along what you're seeking, there will be no double-storey buildings along the southern boundary. Is that right? With the
Correct.
Adjacent rural living zone.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. That's all I've got for you. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Doesn't appear to be any more questions, Mr. Jay. So thank you for your presentation, and thank you for your ability to answer those questions. That was good. All right, councillors. If there's nothing further, can I have a recommendation in relation to this item? Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like the opportunity, before you go to the motion, to actually ask a couple of questions of the Manager of Planning and Environment, Ms. Crane, if I may.
Yeah, you may. Yep.
Thank you very much. Ms. Crane, I note that this development plan was first approved back in 2008. And you've actually made the comment in your report that you feel that this is unusual, given that it does, that the original development plan did include specific design plans and some restrictions as part of the approval of that development plan. Now, given, again, your report states that there's been 4 amendments there, but I would have thought that the council at the time in 2008 were looking to the future and saw that interface between what is now general res and rural residential, and as a way to alleviate any potential, well, what we've got today, issues, is the reason why they included those design plans. Why are they not being adhered to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's two elements to the answer of that question, if I may. So the first answer is in relation to the unusual use of a development plan overlay for protection of heritage assets. Normally, you would use a heritage overlay for protection of a heritage building. In this instance, using a development plan overlay and putting controls on residential development around it is actually an unusual use of a development plan overlay. It doesn't mean that it's not going to work and achieve the appropriate outcome, but it is unusual. In terms of, so the second part of that question is how is it that design controls can be placed onto the developments around it? That is through the Section 173 agreement requirements. So, for example, the properties fronting Highton Lane that were split off in the first iteration of this subdivision, they should have had a Section 173 agreement with design controls placed on them. For some reason, and I am uncertain as to what that reason was, those controls were not placed on through that planning permit that was issued or through the finalisation of that subdivision. The requirement in this development plan is still for a Section 173 to put the ongoing design control outcomes that we're looking for to protect the site more broadly. Some of them are going to be those considerations of the interface. So that would have been why they would have had the farm fencing on that boundary, because it's that rural interface with the residential area. So some of those design parameters are more about those interfaces. Some of those design parameters are how any future dwellings will sit in with the Highton Manor building itself and those heritage values. I'm hoping that answers the question. I'm happy to take a clarification if you'd like one.
No, thank you, Ms. Crane. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Any more questions of council officers? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, Ms. King was, or Mrs. King was mentioning about just the general responsiveness and negotiation during that time has probably potentially been a little bit lacking. I believe you met with Ms. King, is that right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so we had the meeting with all the objectors in July, which was last month. Obviously, with timeframes for council, any council reports are due to be prepared by the beginning of August, so we do have some time constraints there. However, we did have the meeting. After that meeting, or it might have been the end of June, council officers agreed to a range of works. There was a lot of confusion about all of the changes to the development plans, and the result of that was officers committed to a range of different assessments to help provide a better understanding for all of the participants as to what was currently approved versus what was actually being requested in terms of this amendment. And you can see all of that work in the attachments. So that did take a little bit of time to put together, but I have spoken with Ms. King on a couple of occasions, and we have had the opportunity to try and resolve them. Obviously, the issue we have in terms of the fencing is that the current provision is quite clear about what the fencing is on those rear properties, on that property on the southern boundary or abutting properties, and that this application wasn't proposing to change that. As Mr. J mentioned, councillors do have the option to put an alternate, like as we have with the conditions on the current recommendation, there is an option to put an additional condition if councillors feels that's necessary. However, from a planning perspective, because the request did not include a change to an existing approval, we did not feel like that it was a reasonable position from a council officer to recommend a change above and beyond what was already approved in that instance.
So from a planning perspective, if council was to add in an additional point here around the fence, would that be acceptable, legal? Would that be able to funnel back to the developer in that sense?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be. So as Mr. J recommended that he could have that fencing to be negotiated with the property owner to the south could be included as a provision within that, the same way we've got the provisions about the vineyards.
Great. I think that's all my concerns. Thank you, Ms. Crane.
Thank you.
All right, councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this item? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to move the motion on page 37 as is.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Can I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do, Mr. Mayor. I am confident in our officers that we will be able to, as a council, resolve any worries that Ms. King has. It's quite an exciting development, I think. I think the developers got it in mind that they want to keep the feel, the vibe of the historical nature of Highton Manor. And I'm sure that Ms. King will be worked with. There will be a mutual beneficial satisfaction out of this with our with the eagle eye of our planning and environment manager. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb as seconder. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I endorse what Councillor Rabi said, and would take it a step further in terms of this has been, by the looks of it, been on the council books and has been a residential, zoned residential since about 2008, I think it is, maybe even earlier, 2006. So it's been there for a long time. And what in that process, what we've seen is a site, being the whole Highton Manor site, just been neglected, to be perfectly honest about it. And now there's an opportunity to resurrect that whole site, not just the housing, but what's going to go in there with respect to the manor itself, and rebuild that to something that will hopefully be a real positive for this town, and a real attraction for the not just the people around it, but for the rest of the town as well. It should look really good. And on top of that, we actually have a real housing shortage in this town. So these areas that are already zoned residential, they are an obvious place for housing to go to try and address some of the housing concerns that we've got. So I feel really sorry for the Kings, but it's unfortunate that, or fortunate for the town that that's already been zoned residential. So it's, I think we also have an obligation to the town to build the houses there and make the most out of that site, which, as I said, it's got huge opportunities in terms of what could be done on that site if it's done well. And certainly the initial plans that we've seen suggest that it will be done well. And I'm sure that the developers will work with the Kings to come out with a result that will work for all parties. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Webb.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose an alternative motion if I can, please.
I think we need to vote on the motion that we have in front of us first, Councillor Webb, but you possibly can after that. But you are welcome to speak to this motion right now.
Yeah,
if you wish.
Please. I'm not in objection to the development plan. At the end of the day, the development plan is in place. I do feel the developer has the community's best interest in mind in the amendments that they're making. And I completely acknowledge that we are in a massive housing shortage. And the more houses that we can get in the region, the better. My amendment, if I do get the opportunity to speak to it, would be to simply add in that the developer will work with the southern boundary owner around the fence, simply because it is an interface zone. And it is, I believe it to be unfair that being in the position of the Kings, and yes, it is a zone that has been in place for a long time, there still should be some effort made by the developer, which I acknowledge both Mr. J on behalf of the developer has said they will make a strong effort to work with the Kings on this to make sure that the fence and their privacy is respected. I simply wanted to add that in to ensure as a council that we've done everything we can to help the entire community set with this decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? No?
Sorry, I have a right of reply as a proposer to the motion, Mr. Mayor. And I understand Councillor Webb's concern, and I understand where he's going with this. However, I would like to say that by proposing the motion, I have full confidence in our manager of planning and environment to negotiate a win-win situation for the southern boundary owner and the developer. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ravi, and you correctly did have the right of reply. So I'll now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion before us? Motion is carried. All right, I'd like to thank the speakers tonight, Ms. King and Mr. J, for your attendance. If you can still hear me, thank you for participating in tonight's debate. Okay, moving along, item 13.3.1 is the Bealite Village refund. The responsible officer is the Manager of Business and Performance, Mr. Tony Cooper. Mr. Cooper, are you there?
I hope I'm here.
Well, I can hear you, I just can't see you.
Right. There we go.
There you are.
Is that better?
Welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you.
So we're not on the agenda item 13.3.1, the Bealite Village refund at the moment. So, councillors, if I could call on you for any questions or comments in relation to this agenda item. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and welcome, Mr. Cooper. Just a couple of questions. Can you just clarify for me, and I know it's in the agenda item, but just so I'm very clear on this, with respect to Bealite, in the past, we've waived planning permits of $9,390. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Have we given any waivers over and above that?
Not since that amount, which has been since 2015.
Okay. Are we aware of anything before that, or that's the only one you've come across?
No, that's what I believe we've done. I can validate if there's anything before 2015, but I don't believe there was.
No, that's fine. Yep. And we've we're about to refund to Beolite an amount of 4,254, which was the. You just want to explain the rationale behind why we're doing that?
Yes. So Beolite wrote to council seeking that the community centre be made non-rateable. We sought legal advice from our legal advisors, Maddox, who said that since 2019, when the community centre separated from the parent assessment, they met the full threshold of being a charitable location, and as such should not have been rateable. There are still aspects of our normal rate process that they would be required to pay, being the bins, they'd still have to pay the bins and the FSPL, the fire service levy, but we would refund the rates, the municipal and the community waste charge since 2019 when they were separated from the parent assessment.
Okay. And we've also received legal advice as well. Can you just update us on that, please?
In relation to the other three components of Beolite Village?
Correct.
Yeah, so in relation to the residential, the undeveloped land being parent assessment and the vacant land at 211 Malcolm Street, we've been provided legal advice that they are rateable under the legislation. They don't meet the threshold of being non-rateable or charitable. Although the legislation, I might add, is different to the Tax Act that has been quoted by Beolite, that they meet the charitable status under the Tax Act, which is different to what we do operate under the Local Government Act.
So, thank you. And so we're following, as far as we've been advised, the letter of the law in terms of the rates that we're charging Beolite.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Cooper. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Is there any other questions for Mr. Cooper, councillors? No, no other questions. Okay. Can I have a motion in relation to the agenda item, Councillor Holcomb?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that council refund rates and municipal and community waste charges remitted since the community centre became a separate assessable property in 2019 and therefore considered non-rateable. That is 3 years of rates being the sum of $4,254.49.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. A seconder? Councillor Sladden. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Mr. Mayor, only in as much that it's disappointing that Beolite have been overcharged for the community centre, and well done, Mr. Cooper, in identifying that. And I've got no doubt with the support of Dina, our GM of Corporate and Community. So well done in identifying that. I just like to say that we're big supporters of Beolite, and that's been in evidence for a number of years now, and it goes back to the stage at least when they got the planning permits waived. And I know previous councils have also been very supportive in the growth of Beolite as well. So it's something that we're very, very proud of as a town to have, and we know they are very well regarded. From a council's point of view, I just would like to reiterate that we're following the letter of the law, and that's what we should be doing, in my view. And if the letter of the law is that rates are charged in the areas that they are being charged, I'm very comfortable to move a motion to support that.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Sladden?
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to thank Mr. Cooper for his very clear and concise report, and it does not warrant further commentary. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sladden. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Rabi?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this motion, obviously. It is very clear that previous councils since the inception of Beelite have been supportive, as are we, with the fees being waived of $9,390 for planning fees over time. I'm glad that this was picked up and that we can say sorry if we have overcharged you. It's good for being a transparent council that we're able to deal with this and refund this money of $4,254.49 Beelite. So thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Anyone else wish to speak? If I could just reiterate what the fellow councillors have said, Beelite's a very, very much admired and respected establishment in this town, and we really appreciate the work they've done and they're going to continue to do. We've been happy to help out where we can, and having the community centre now available, well, also not now, but is available to other community groups to use. I think it's very generous of Beelite to do that, to open their doors to other community groups, and we will continue to help them out where we can down the track as much as we can in respect to cost savings around rates. Also, would like to remind them that, the undeveloped land that they have is being rated as rural residential, not residential. So that is also a help out for them. And yeah, that's enough said. So if I could just now put this motion to the vote, all those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item 13.3.2 is the Mansfield Shire Governance Rules 2022. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that Council adopt the Mansfield Shire Council Governance Rules 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Can I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Holcomb. Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor, just to say that it's good modernisation of our governance rules, bringing into line basically what our council has done since the beginning, which is meeting in electronic means. We found that we're getting a much better public viewing rate when holding these meetings online. It's a lot more accessible to people. It's usually quite a difficult time that we hold these meetings for anyone with kids or anyone they're looking after. It's dinner time. So being able to hold these online, streaming online, I think is a very accessible way for people to view the goings on in council. Also, very supportive of the use of gender neutral language in this redo, just to bring it into the modern day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb?
No comment, no further comment, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item 14 is Assembly of Councillors. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to the item? Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Motion that council receive and note the Assembly of Councillors report to the period 19th of July 2022 to the 2nd of August 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. A seconder to the motion. Councillor Sladden. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. The item 15 is council meeting resolution action status register. Councillors, can I have a motion, please? Councillor Raby.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Move the motion that council receive and note the council resolutions register as at the 10th of August 2022. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. A seconder? Councillor Webb. Would any councillors like to speak to the motion? Okay, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item number 16 and 17 nil. Item number 18 is the closure of the meeting to members of the public. Councillors, can I have a motion? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Motion being that council close the meeting to members of the public under section 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider confidential reports in accordance with section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 for reasons set out in section 19 below.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. A seconder to that motion. Councillor Holcomb. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. We will now leave the main room into the breakout room and rejoin members of the public in due course.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are now back in the main room.
Thank you, Ms. Moss. I'd now like to officially close the August meeting of the Mansfield Shire Council. I'd like to thank my fellow councillors and council officers and the members of the general public who have been online tonight with us. Thank you very much, and good night.
Good night.